if somebody who wants to make a living raising livestock, they're going to have to be, for instance, aware of, because, for instance, let's say they've got a couple dairy goats for milk, and somebody drives by and they look and say, boy, look at those goats. They're in the, a lot like this. Now, somebody from town may say, look at that, those poor animals having to walk on dirt, and when it rains it's going to look muddy, where most of us would look at it and say, yeah, that's pretty typical, that's a generally accepted practice to have a lot like this where they can get into a barn out of the sun, but they prefer being out in the fresh air, and yes, it's going to be muddy on rainy days, just like taking your dog to a wet park. So, but the point is that if they're not following some of those principles, they could hold themselves up to, see, they're crossing the barrier now from pets to livestock, and somebody could drive by and say, hey, look at those people, and if they're not aware of, we're talking husbandry, water, feed, dry clean housing, those sorts of things, proper fencing, and there are guidelines. This is perhaps a little different than some people's comfort level with their pets. When we talk about generally accepted practices with farm animals, there are certainly guidelines and ways to do some of these procedures. To be honest, in many situations with pigs, with cattle, the castration is done not as elaborately as it would be for others. Let's say having a dog or cat, no general anesthesia. We might use a local anesthetic, things like that. So you're not looking at nearly the cost as perhaps some people associate with some of their veterinary care for pets. But you can't have animals and not provide some care. And when you look at providing care, some can be very basic. You can give your own shots and medicines, but others will or may very well need veterinary intervention, where you're probably going to need veterinary intervention if you ever have a larger group of animals, flock of sheep, several dairy goats, and you have in particular a population or herd outbreak where you may need their help getting you set up with a diagnostic lab and some of the testing that has to be done to get a correct diagnosis of, advice over which vaccines to use, how to administer them. Again, you may very well get that from another livestock owner or a veterinarian. So there are costs to animals, and I can guarantee you, having been in this business for over 25 years, you won't have animals around and not deal with, sooner or later, sickness and dying animals and veterinary and or drug costs. That is something that should be seriously considered before getting into any kind of adventure like this.